Hey everybody, it's Eric with All Scale Garage, and I'm down here today in the basement workshop to talk to you a little bit about a model that I built back in 2017. This is going to be the first of a series of build biographies on models that I've previously built and have had some success with in contests and different shows across the East Coast. I'd like you guys to sit back and enjoy this build biography on my 29 Ford Model A Speedster based on the Revell 29 Ford model kit. This was the first edition of this kit. Came back about 2017, 2016. I think these are coming about right when the contest was. So this model was built for the Buckeye Scale Auto BCA Buckeye. So the Buckeye Scale Auto Club puts on a show every year in Columbus, and for that show they have something called the Buckeye Challenge. The Buckeye Challenge is one kit that they select at random. The first couple years it was at random. After a while they let the winner of the previous year pick. I actually had the pleasure of winning 3 years in a row, 1 year with this model. And actually I picked this model when I won with a previous build the year before. And I figured there was a lot of different ways you could build a 29 Ford. Rat rods, customs, drag cars. There's a million different ways. So got home, processed the data for a little while in my head, started thinking about different ideas, and I wanted to look at a different spin on it. So to give you a little backstory on what led me to this concept, I went to SEMA in 2015. Rob Ida built a 40 Mercury that was just mind-blowing. In fact, that year my friend Andy went with me to SEMA, and he had to drag me away from that car on several occasions. I think I could have spent all day studying the details and looking at it. Full underbelly, and it was just an awesome vehicle. It's still one of my all-time favorite cars. And then when this 29 Ford Challenge came up, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to build something like that. So that is where I ended up with this concept of the 29 Ford Streamliner Speedster. I'm moving in and looking at the model in a little bit closer detail. One of the things that stands out first and foremost are the Fender Pods. These Fender Pods actually I've created using a 3D printer, a low-res, early technology, the one with the plastic goo, I always call it. I had one of those. I wasn't able to get a whole lot of really good stuff out of it. So what I was able to do, though, was get basic shapes. So my thought with that is if I created the basic shape, sanded it smooth, I could vacuum form it. And I basically used it like making a vacuum formed mold to create these Fender Pods. So I actually backed up each piece of the 3D print with a piece of styrene. I made two halves. The two halves are exactly the same. So what that gave me when I vacuum formed it was a hollow piece and a nice flat bind edge that I can use just to use regular standard thin Tamiya glue to glue the two together and clamp it. Because this was my own, my own design, I was able to only make 2 molds and create all 4 of the Fender Pods because they actually are all 4 identical. So after the pods were created, this seam was sanded down and I added chrome trim just using styrene strip both on the top and down here just as a little accent line to set it off a little bit. A lot of the development on this vehicle was done using my Silhouette scrapbook cutter. What's really nice about that is it allows me to actually design the car in the computer. So what I did early on is I took this body shell, did a side view and a bottom view on a flatbed scanner, just a regular old flatbed scanner at work. And I took those two and aligned them together in Illustrator, and I scanned everything at full size. So that way I don't have to measure anything. I know if I printed anything out, it would be exactly this size. Made all of the pieces that tie in with the body based on that. So I just went ahead and then I could kind of go crazy once you get these elements in, because you know these are your hard parts. Everything's going to fit to this once you have it scanned in accurately. I went ahead and scanned this in, then drew the chassis, which this is a Highboy. I don't know if you noticed, it actually sits on top of the frame. It made it easier to elongate because it actually comes straight off the back, and there's a luggage carrier built in. All of this was drawn and kind of thought out in flat terms and then cut out and glued together, kind of like a kit. I left a little opening there, kind of a diffuser of sort on a modern car, but for this, it acts as a luggage rack to hold that chest. And I guess in real life, that chest would slide out and then you can open the trunk or rumble seat. The trim was just added. That's just some rib styrene. And this exterior trim, this is again layered 10 thousandths styrene cut on that scrapbook cutter. What that gave me is a little opening here. I was able to run the exhaust out on both sides. I did some polished brass hangers just to add a little bit of detail because those are really just straight strips. The grill was quite a challenge, and this is one of those I wanted to see if I could challenge myself to do it. I actually did individual strips of 20,000 styrene cut on that cutter and then stacked them together and glued them so you actually have a see-through grill that has some dimensions. So if you actually look through it from the top when the hood's off, you can actually see air through that a little bit. There you go. So you actually see up through the bottom, and it creates a whole underbelly, which I thought was neat. One of my other favorite features of this model is that the body shell itself is pretty much box stock, with the exception of a couple minor modifications. So the one modification, this body line right here, it doesn't match up with the cowl. So I actually extended the cowl to create the line for the hood. The other modification are these little scoops. Because of the engine I used, the air actually flows in through the cowl through a supercharger. So we needed an air inlet. So I created a couple little pieces, and these are a couple Starbucks stir sticks glued together, sanded, and then added a flat piece of styrene again to make a flange, and then vacuum formed that twice, and that created those little scoops on the side. This is a replicas and miniatures windshield. I did have to grind out these little areas right there to get that to fit, because I think it's technically for the AMT kit, not the Revell kit. To get the extended look of the body, instead of actually modifying it, I created this fun little trunk. It's funny, if you take it off, like the taillight holes and everything are still underneath there because it's all completely covered. So I didn't even have to fill any of those. So this trunk actually extends the visual appearance of the vehicle and gives it that long, low Streamliner look, and a little bit more like a European car of the times and not so much like a Model A. The headlights on this are actually 3D printed. At the time, Shapeways was by far the best solution for nice detailed printing. So these are Woodlight headlights. These were options back in the 30s. The only reason I knew about them, a local guy here has a Hollywood Graham street rod, and had these as both the headlights and the taillights, and I'd see them out at local shows. So I kind of did a little bit of research, and I was able to model I 3D modeled these myself in Form Z, which is a program I use for work, sent out to Shapeways to have printed. And they're actually up on my Shapeways store if anybody's interested. But I based it off the actual patent drawing. I found the patent drawings from the 30s and made these bad boys based on that. The ones on the car, obviously primed a few times, hit with some all-clad. Steering wheel's clear lay film from Hobby Lobby, because if you look at like the Delahaye's, they all have these crystal clear acrylic steering wheels at the time that were just fantastic. So I wanted to bring something that looks like that. It also has a crystal clear shift knob. There's a clear bead. A pin underneath that is one of the A&N nuts from like Detail Master. Comes down here. I did a photo etched washer, and then I sculpted my own boot, and then painted it a leather color to match the seats. The decals you're seeing here are from Ushi Vander. I'm gonna butcher that name. I'm sorry. It's these guys. German decal manufacturer. I went to an IPMS show, and there was somebody building this HO229 special that had all of these plywood wood patterns in it, and they were all different, slightly different tones. So I talked to the builder. He put me onto these guys, and I picked up the kit for that HO229, you know, little half sheets. But what I didn't realize, and he didn't tell me at the time, is these are incredibly transparent. You can actually change the tone of the wood by your undertone on what color you airbrush. So with this, like this back in the trunk area, I actually put some pearl in it to get a little bit of that shimmer like a natural maple has when it's in the sun. So the side wood, you know, the wood on the door panels, the wood on the dash is another kit from them, which is actually called the Trucker's Delight Pack. It has a bunch of different burls, and so I used the burl walnut there, and then also the lighter maple on the top. And some bare metal foil to create the look of the dash. Looking at things like this hood detail, the outer trim area is cut on my silhouette cutter, because then I can do them exactly symmetrical side to side. So just kind of drew that pattern again in Illustrator, glued that onto the body, and then bare metal foiled it afterwards. But for things like this grill opening, where it's got a little bit of mesh in it, what I've started doing is I'll take this is a Ferrari FXX detail set from Crazy Modeler, and I scanned on a flatbed scanner, scanned this entire thing in, and I have it on my desktop. And then anytime I need something, I kind of look at what's available on these, and I can actually draw a perimeter bezel, or if I just want to use pieces or parts. So those pieces actually came out right here, and I just glued those in from the back. I think this was like, you know, 13, 14 bucks, maybe 20 bucks tops, but I got a bunch of seatbelt hardware out of it and all these grill pieces. I think I used a couple of the other pieces on a couple other builds. The engine is a Miller straight 8. Etzel's made a resin model of it for a while. It's kind of cool because it's actually 2 4-cylinder Offenhausers hooked together if you really look at it. It has got this really cool element on this side, which is a giant intercooler. So it's an aluminum intercooler, finned intercooler, so the air, as the air ran by it, it cooled off the air. And it's got a supercharger back here at the back. So that's why it's got these air scoops on each side. So the air would actually come into the cowl. Through that, the carburetor and everything would be under the dash in this particular instance. Out through this engine painted up fantastic. When I was developing the chassis, I added the extra length to fit the straight 8 in there. So this was cast metal. The engine itself was cast resin. And these aren't available anymore, and I'm really glad I got to build one because I'm very, very impressed with the build quality, the detail. I did hand make the exhaust manifold, made some engine mounts that sandwiched in there. I added little rubber O-rings and whatnot there to give a little bit of detail to those, just so they catch your eye. I used RB Motion turned aluminum, machined aluminum spark plugs, and wrapped the end of the spark plug wire around the top to make it look like it doesn't have a spark plug boot. Going all this trouble trying to keep things looking period correct. I wasn't going to just stick a normal rubber spark plug boot on there. I had to do something a little bit more upscale. What is really cool on this, if you notice, there's an identification plate here, and there's also one on the engine where they are in real life. Those came from N-scale steam engines. I guess at the front of an N-scale steam engine, there's a little brass plaque. I found them at a local train show, and they made photo etch versions. I've used them for a bunch of different things. So I mean, if you ever see those out when you're out and about, they're, you know, look through the N-scale train stuff, and they have these nice little brass registration plaques, info plaques that come in handy on 1/25th scale for sure. That kind of explains how the model was built. What's really cool about this is I've had very, very, very good success with this particular model. I had Best of Show in Detroit at the NNL, Best of Show in New Jersey at the NNL, Best of Show at Toledo NNL. And just numerous awards, engineering awards, best paint, which I really appreciate. Although I go to contests, I don't tend to build for contests. I built this because this was literally an idea in my head, and the Columbus show was a excuse to get it out. One of the things I like to do when I have a model that has this much development, this much scratch building put into it, is to create a little build book, a little build biography I can set next to it at the contest. This gives the ability for any onlooker to come up and flip through this and kind of get the story we just told in this video. A little bit of backstory, a little bit of inspiration images, showing everything down to the detail of how the frame was made, how the body was scanned in, how each of the fender sponses were made, the underneath, the grill. A lot of the stuff we just talked about, but this gives somebody at a quick glance at a contest the ability to see some of the things that weren't just pulled from another kit. The other thing having a book like this gives you the ability to do is have really nice, big, blown up beauty images, beauty shots. Not everybody has the best eyesight at these shows, and as we get older, none of us are going to have the best eyesight. With digital cameras, digital camera technology, we're able to pull in and get these gorgeous images and print them nice and big like this, so somebody who wants to look at the model but doesn't have the best eyesight can actually flip through this. And I've had people do it to me before, like, hey, I didn't know that, where's that? And then they go look at the model and they can actually see that there isn't a registration plate there, or there is a small plate on the actual cam cover, or these bolt heads are actually separate photo etched pieces. Glancing at the model, you don't see that detail up close until you see it in a still photograph. Thank you guys so much. It's been really fun reviewing this model with you. It's been 5 years since I built it. I actually forgot about a lot of the things I've done on it, so this was a really cool overview for me and probably for you. If you have any questions, please ask them down below in the comments section. Blow up that like button. If you like this, share it on Facebook. Tell your friends. I'm trying to build this channel so I can do more of this stuff. Upcoming, I'm going to have some tutorials on how to use that scrapbook cutter that I used on this build. Super easy entry-level way to get yourself into some CNC cutting for model car purposes and cut down build time drastically, and I'll go through that when I do that tutorial. Other than that, I really appreciate it. I think our next video will be back out in the garage working on some Datsuns, because that's what we do, and follow up with even more model car content. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate your time.